Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. We love to tackle the big stuff here, the concepts that can really reshape how you see the world and your place in it. And today, we're diving deep into one of those foundational ideas, self-discipline.
You guys have sent in a treasure trove of books, articles, videos, you name it, and it's all pointing to this idea that self-discipline is that hidden engine driving so much of what we call success.
And our mission today is to extract the gold from this material, to distill it down into those powerful insights that you can grab hold of, those practical, actionable bits of knowledge that you can start using right now to make a difference in your own lives.
The material you shared really doesn't mess around. It goes straight to the heart of the matter, exploring self-discipline in a really grounded, practical way. It's not just some abstract virtue you hear about, but a tangible force that shapes everything from hitting those personal goals to building strong relationships, even to your health.
Absolutely. And look, we know you're all coming to this deep dive with different experiences, different goals, different challenges. Maybe you're hitting a wall in some area of your life. Maybe you're just fascinated by why some people seem to excel while others struggle. Or maybe you're just curious. Whatever brought you here, we've designed this deep dive to give you those aha moments, those clicks in your understanding, without ever feeling like we're overloading you with information.
So where do we even start with something as big as self-discipline?
Well, the one thing that really jumps out from all this material is the foundational importance of self-discipline. It's not just a nice to have. It's presented as the bedrock, the essential ingredient for a truly successful and fulfilling life.
Right from the start, one of the sources tells this incredibly powerful story. It's the author's personal journey. And they begin by talking about how they started with very little formal education, working tough manual jobs. But then they hit this turning point. They started asking themselves, why are some people so much more successful than others? And the answer they arrived at, the one that really echoes throughout everything you sent in, is self-discipline.
That's such a strong place to begin, right? Because it's not about some magical formula or some inherent talent. And the source defines discipline in a way that really cuts through the clutter, simply resisting the lure of excuses.
Yeah, that's powerful. And the material is very clear. Self-discipline isn't just one key to a great life. It's the key. And you can't have real lasting success without it. The flip side is that lack of self-discipline is what's at the root of so much frustration, underachievement, even unhappiness.
And then it introduces these two concepts, these sort of enemies of success that I think we can all relate to, the path of least resistance and the expediency factor.
Right. The path of least resistance. I think we all know that one. It's that human instinct to take the easy way out, right? Like hitting that snooze button a few too many times, or choosing the quick fix instead of digging in and solving the root cause, always looking for that shortcut. And the thing is, even though it feels good in the moment, choosing that easy path over and over again becomes a habit, and it can stop you from tackling the hard but necessary things that actually lead to growth.
And the expediency factor takes it a step further, doesn't it? It's not just easy, it's fast and easy. That kind of short-sighted thinking where you don't even stop to consider what the long-term consequences might be.
Like grabbing that sugary snack because it's quick and easy, even though you know it's not good for you in the long run. And we all face that internal battle, that tug of war between doing what's right, what's hard but ultimately rewarding, versus what's fun, easy, comfortable right now, even if it's not really good for us in the long term.
So it sounds like discipline in this context really boils down to self-denial in a way. It's saying no to those easy pleasures, those quick fixes, so you can say yes to those bigger, more meaningful, long-term goals and rewards.
It's the whole idea of delayed gratification. And this really ties into something fascinating that the material brought up. There's a sociologist, Dr. Edward Banfield, and he did this massive 50-year study. You know what his main takeaway was? The most important factor for success. It wasn't talent. It wasn't even luck. It was having a long-time perspective.
So being able to think ahead, to see the big picture, to connect what you do today with where you want to be years down the line.
Exactly. And the source even talks about the role of sacrifice in this long-term thinking. It's being willing to give up some comfort or pleasure today for a bigger payoff down the road.
Okay, so that lays the groundwork for why self-discipline is so vital. But now let's shift gears a bit. How does this material define personal success? It doesn't seem to be just about external achievements, those trophies and accolades, does it?
It goes deeper than that. There's this echo of Aristotle in here. The idea that the true measure of success isn't what you achieve on the outside, but the kind of person you become on the inside. So personal success is as much about character development as it is about racking up accomplishments.
And one of the first things it pushes you, the listener, to do is to really define what personal success means to you. It asks some tough questions. What would your ideal life look like? What would your perfect career and financial situation be if you could design it?
Because we all have different visions of what the good life really looks like. And there's a powerful definition in the material. It says success is being able to live your life in your own way, doing only those things that you want to do, with the people you choose, in the situations you desire.
That's a pretty compelling vision. But here's where it gets a little tricky. The material points out that there's a huge difference in how people approach getting better at what they do. It even pulls in some research from Jeffrey Colvin's book, Talent is Overrated. It says that a big chunk of people, like 80%, don't really upgrade their skills much after their first year or so in a job.
Yeah. They reach a certain level of competency and then just kind of coast. And that's in stark contrast to the top performers, the people who are always striving to learn, to improve, to push their boundaries. And the material suggests that this difference in dedication to growth plays a major role in things like wealth distribution.
And this links up so well with The Millionaire Next Door, right? That book that found that the vast majority of millionaires, something like 85%, built their fortunes through hard work and discipline, not because they were born with special advantages.
Exactly. So we've talked about what personal success might look like, and we've touched on the importance of hard work. But now the material goes deeper into the laws that it says govern success itself.
Laws of success? That sounds almost, I don't know, mystical.
Well, not really. They're more like fundamental principles that are at work, whether we're aware of them or not. The first one is the law of cause and effect. And when you apply this to success, it's pretty straightforward. If you do the things successful people do, you'll eventually get similar results.
Okay, that's pretty logical. What's next?
The law of sowing and reaping. It's the age-old wisdom that you reap what you sow. What you put in determines what you get out.
So if you're not happy with the results you're seeing in your life right now, you need to change what you're putting in. You need to plant new seeds, so to speak.
Exactly. And then there's the law of correspondence. This one gets a little deeper. It says your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. Your lifestyle, your financial situation. They're a mirror of the kind of person you've become and the price you've been willing to pay in terms of effort and discipline.
I like the analogy the material uses here. It compares success to a cafeteria, not a restaurant. In a restaurant, you order, you eat, then you pay. But in the cafeteria of success, you got to pay the full price up front through effort, through learning, through consistent discipline before you get to enjoy the meal.
It's such a great way to visualize it. And the source also stresses how important it is to never stop learning, to always be seeking advice from people who've already achieved what you want. They tell this great story about an inventor who saved himself 10 years of work just by adopting a new technology that he learned about from someone else in his field.
See, that's the thing. There's so much knowledge out there, so much wisdom we can tap into if we just make the effort. And the material even compares achieving success to achieving physical fitness.
It's not a one-time event, it's an ongoing process. You have to keep showing up, keep putting in the effort, just like you would with any other healthy habit.
And there's this really memorable story about a salesman who was doing really well, but then his income plateaued. It wasn't that the principles he'd learned stopped working. It was that he stopped working them. He stopped listening to the motivational programs. He stopped going to the seminars, and his results reflected that.
So true. It's a constant journey, not a destination you arrive at and then stop.
Okay, so we've covered the why of self-discipline and the laws governing success, but let's get practical. What are some concrete things you can actually do to cultivate self-discipline?
Well, one of the first things the material suggests is to really get clear on what your ideal life looks like. And not just in a vague sense, but across all the areas that matter. Personal growth, professional aspirations, financial goals.
Because if you don't know where you're going, it's pretty hard to stay on track when those inevitable distractions pop up, right?
Exactly. And another key principle it emphasizes is the law of repetition. Just like building any skill, you get better at self-discipline through consistent practice. The more you choose the disciplined path, even in small things, the easier it becomes over time.
It's about creating those neural pathways, right? Making disciplined behavior almost automatic, like brushing your teeth. And the source really drives home that it's about consistent effort. It even compares it to showering or brushing our teeth, those little things we do every day without even thinking about it.
Yeah, self-discipline isn't always about these big, dramatic displays of willpower. It's about making those small, disciplined choices consistently over time. And the material even challenges you, the listener, with some questions to get you thinking. Like, what would your ideal financial situation look like? And what are the specific disciplines you'd need to achieve that?
Now let's talk about character. The material makes a strong link between self-discipline and the kind of person you become. It argues that in the pursuit of your goals, who you become is even more important than what you achieve.
It all comes back to that Aristotelian idea, right? And your character, who you are at your core, is essentially the sum of all your choices, all your decisions. Every time you choose the path of discipline, of integrity, you strengthen your character. Every time you compromise, you weaken it.
And the material lists some key virtues that define a person of strong character: courage, compassion, generosity, temperance, persistence, friendliness. But it's clear that integrity is the most important one.
Yeah, it calls integrity the foundation, the cornerstone. Living in complete truth with yourself and with others. And of course, it takes real self-discipline to live at that level of integrity, to consistently do the right thing, even when it's hard, even when you're tempted to cut corners.
Because you're constantly bombarded with choices, big and small, and every choice reflects your values. So character is kind of like that inner defense against temptation, against taking the easy way out.
And the payoff for building that strong character is huge. You feel better about yourself, you gain the respect of others, and it opens up more opportunities in all areas of your life.
But the flip side is that even if you're talented and intelligent, if you lack character, it's going to hold you back. You're not going to be trusted. You're not going to attract the right kinds of people into your life.
And speaking of the right kinds of people, the material talks about the role of parents in shaping their children's character. It's about consciously instilling those values, those virtues, but even more importantly, modeling them in your own life.
Kids learn so much by watching what we do, not just by listening to what we say. And the source especially emphasizes the importance of truthfulness, not punishing kids for telling the truth, even when it's hard to hear.
It's so important for them to feel safe coming to you with the truth. And it's not just about telling the truth ourselves. It's about modeling all those other virtues too. Compassion, generosity, patience, courage, perseverance.
And forgiving others. The source says that's one of the highest forms of self-discipline, being willing to let go of anger and resentment.
Because holding on to those negative emotions only hurts you in the end. It doesn't really affect the other person.
There's also this really fascinating link the material draws between individual character and the health of society as a whole. It mentions Francis Fukuyama's work on high trust and low trust societies.
The idea is that in societies where people are generally trustworthy, where integrity is valued, you see more stability, more prosperity, more cooperation.
Because trust is the glue that holds everything together, right? Whether it's personal relationships, business dealings, or even just everyday interactions.
And the material even talks about how acting consistently with your ideal self-image can create a kind of upward spiral. When you behave in a way that aligns with your values, you feel better about yourself, and that leads to more positive actions, and so on.
Okay, let's move on to another crucial area: accepting responsibility. It seems like this is a key step in taking control of your life and achieving your goals.
It absolutely is. The material makes a strong connection between blaming others and experiencing negative emotions. Anger, resentment, helplessness, they often depend on being able to point the finger outward.
So it takes self-discipline to break free from that blame game, to stop making excuses. The message is pretty clear. You're 100% responsible for everything in your life: who you are, what you become, the results you achieve.
And that includes your reactions to things, even things that you didn't directly cause. The material actually suggests using a little phrase to help with this. I am responsible. Saying that to yourself, even when it's hard, can help shift your mindset from victim to victor.
Because taking responsibility is really about becoming a mental adult, isn't it? It's about moving beyond that childlike mindset of blaming others and taking ownership of your life. And this applies to everything, including your finances. You're responsible for the job you choose, for your spending habits, for your investments.
And it's interesting how intelligence can play a role here. You can use your intelligence to come up with elaborate excuses, or you can use it to figure out how you are responsible and how you can improve your situation.
And the action steps for this section are really powerful. They encourage you to take responsibility for past events, to forgive others, to truly let go of those things that are holding you back.
Because forgiveness is ultimately a gift you give yourself.
All right, let's talk goals. The material says that writing down your goals and making plans to achieve them can increase your likelihood of success tenfold.
10 times. That's huge. It even talks about a failure mechanism and a success mechanism. The failure mechanism is that tendency to take the path of least resistance, to just drift along. And the success mechanism is what gets activated when you set clear, compelling goals.
So goals are like that rudder and compass,
Yeah.
giving you direction and purpose. The material gives a fantastic example of a guy who went from earning $50,000 a year selling cars to making over $1 million annually, and he credits it all to setting goals and making plans.
And the material reminds us that humans are goal-oriented beings. We thrive when we have something to aim for, something to strive towards.
And it encourages you to become a lifelong goal setter. One of the exercises it suggests is the major definite purpose exercise. It involves writing down your main goal as a question and then brainstorming at least 20 different answers to that question.
It's about pushing yourself beyond those obvious first few answers to really tap into your creativity and find new possibilities. And then the key is to take action, to pick one of those ideas and start working on it immediately.
And the action steps for this section are all about getting clear on what you want and then putting it into writing, listing 10 goals in the present tense as if you've already achieved them.
That kind of positive framing can be really powerful. It helps you to see your goals as attainable, to really believe that you can achieve them.
Now, let's talk about lifelong learning and the pursuit of personal excellence. The material emphasizes how important it is to constantly be learning and growing, especially in today's fast-paced world.
Especially now, right? Knowledge and skills can become obsolete so quickly. It revisits the 80-20 rule and even talks about how the top 1% of earners are often those who are constantly learning and developing their skills.
And it contrasts the average income growth over a career with the potential for those who commit to lifelong learning. It says personal excellence is a choice, not an accident. You have to actively decide to pursue it.
And it compares mental fitness to physical fitness. Just like you have to keep working out to stay in shape, you have to keep learning and growing to stay mentally sharp.
And the good news is that almost any skill can be learned if you're willing to put in the time and effort. One of the things material suggests is to identify the top performers in your field and learn from them, to study their habits, their mindsets, their approaches.
It's the whole idea of fly with the eagles. And it even mentions a story about a guy named Bob Barton who transformed his sales performance by simply mirroring the behaviors of his more successful colleagues.
There's so much wisdom out there, and often the people who are at the top are actually willing to share what they know. But you have to ask. And the source has this really practical piece of advice called the 3% rule. It suggests investing at least 3% of your annual income back into yourself for learning and development.
Whether that's books, courses, conferences, whatever it takes to keep growing. And it tells this story about a guy in Detroit who significantly increased his income by following this rule.
It shows the power of investing in yourself, and it ties into that idea that it takes time to master anything. There's that often quoted figure of 10,000 hours or about 7 years of practice to become truly world-class at something.
So it's about making that commitment to excellence and understanding that if you're not getting better, you're probably getting worse, especially in a world that's changing so quickly.
The material even suggests turning off the TV and using that time for learning instead.
That's a bold move. But think about how much time we all spend passively consuming media. What if we redirected that time to something more productive?
And the action steps for this section are all about getting proactive, making the decision to invest in yourself, identifying the key skills you need to develop, setting goals, and committing to lifelong learning.
It's about becoming a lifelong learner, always seeking out new knowledge and skills.
Now let's move on to the relationship between self-discipline and courage. Often, the very things we need to do to achieve our goals are also the things that scare us the most.
Right, because growth requires stepping outside of our comfort zone, which can be scary. The material quotes Mark Twain's definition of courage. It's not the absence of fear, but the mastery of it.
And Churchill called courage the most important virtue because all the others depend on it. And it's important to remember that everyone feels fear. What separates the brave from the cowardly is how they respond to that fear.
The material says that fears are learned responses, and that means they can be unlearned. So when you feel that "I can't" feeling, it's often just a fear response that you can overcome.
And it talks about developing courage by doing the things you fear until the fear subsides. There's this example from the sales world called the 100 call method, where you intentionally make a ton of cold calls knowing that you're going to get rejected a lot.
It's about facing that fear head on until it loses its power over you. Like Toastmasters International, where people overcome their fear of public speaking by practicing in a safe environment.
And there's this idea that fears can be bundled together, so overcoming one big fear can actually help diminish other related fears, like confronting a bully. It's an act of courage that can break that cycle of fear.
And the material gives this four-step approach for overcoming worry. First, define the worst-case scenario. Second, accept that it might happen. Third, make a plan to improve the situation if it does happen. And fourth, and most importantly, take action.
And it also talks about the power of positive self-talk. Repeating affirmations like "I am unstoppable" can actually help you to persevere when things get tough. And it emphasizes seeing setbacks as persistence tests, as opportunities to prove your character and your commitment.
Because setbacks are inevitable. It's how you respond to them that matters.
Okay, now let's dive into persistence, that unwavering determination to keep going even when the going gets tough.
The material makes the point that building a reputation for hard work and discipline can open doors and create opportunities. And it talks about the difference in income between average performers and top performers, and how that difference is often a reflection of the individual's effort and discipline.
Because it's not always about the company's willingness to pay, it's about the value that you bring to the table. And the source encourages you to figure out your hourly rate and then focus on tasks that are worth that rate or more.
And to talk to your manager about prioritizing your key activities. Make sure you're spending your time on the things that have the biggest impact. The material even talks about this idea of a secret survey. It's the fact that everyone in an organization knows who the hard workers are, who the slackers are. Your reputation matters.
And it gives a simple but effective formula for success. Come in early, work hard, stay late. Just adding a few extra productive hours to your day can make a huge difference over time.
It's about going above and beyond, doing more than what's expected. That's what separates the people who thrive from the people who just survive.
Now let's shift gears to leadership. The material suggests that self-discipline plays a crucial role in becoming an effective leader.
Leaders set the tone, right? They establish the standards for behavior, for work quality, for time management, for appearance, and they lead by example.
They work harder, they're more committed, they embody the qualities they want to see in their team members, and they create a culture of respect and consideration.
And they walk the talk. Their actions align with their words and values. Real leadership is about more than just having a title.
It's about demonstrating those leadership qualities even before you have the official position. Taking initiative, being responsible, focusing on solutions.
By acting like a leader, you position yourself to become one.
Now, let's talk about business success. The material is very clear about the level of competition out there and the need for focus and discipline to attract and retain customers.
Right. It says the first law of economics is scarcity, and the first law of business is competition. So you have to be really disciplined to offer something that people want at a price they're willing to pay.
And it emphasizes the importance of balancing optimism with realism. You need enthusiasm to launch a business, but you also need a clear-eyed assessment of the market and the competition.
The material talks about the importance of doing your homework, of creating a detailed business plan and constantly updating it. And it points out that a lot of businesses fail because of errant assumptions, things they think are true but haven't actually verified.
So it's important to test your assumptions before you make any big commitments. And it also talks about developing a solid sales system, understanding your costs, pricing effectively, and prioritizing customer satisfaction.
And always striving for continuous improvement. That's the KNI formula, continuous and never-ending improvement.
And entrepreneurs often have to work long hours to be really proactive in identifying and solving problems and to focus on the tasks that have the biggest impact.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. And it requires a lot of self-discipline to stay the course.
Let's shift focus now to sales specifically. The material describes it as a challenging but potentially very rewarding profession.
And it makes the point that the income potential in sales is often directly related to your effort and your discipline. Whether a business succeeds or fails often comes down to how effectively it sells its products or services.
And it highlights this interesting disconnect. Executives will say that sales is the most important function in their business, but then they often don't spend much time on it themselves.
And the source talks about the importance of having a clear sales process and being disciplined about following it. There's a personal story in there about someone starting a business and quickly realizing that sales had to be the top priority.
The material even defines when a salesperson is truly working, when they're talking to a potential customer, either face-to-face or on the phone. And it has this great 6-word rule for sales success. Spend more time with better prospects.
And it talks about overcoming the fear of rejection. You have to be willing to put yourself out there and make contact with people, even if it means getting rejected sometimes.
Because there's a direct correlation between the number of people you reach out to and the number of sales you make. It's about playing the numbers game. And it emphasizes the minutes principle. The more face-to-face time you spend with potential buyers, the more likely you are to close deals.
It's about casting a wide net and talking to as many qualified prospects as possible. And while you can't control whether or not someone ultimately decides to buy from you, you can control the activities that lead up to the sale.
It even uses this analogy of a sales funnel, where prospects come in at the top and eventually trickle down to become closed deals.
And a salesperson's job is to keep that funnel full and to constantly improve their effectiveness at each stage of the process.
Okay, let's move on to financial independence. The material says that a lack of self-discipline, especially when it comes to spending, can be a major obstacle to achieving financial freedom.
It talks about that almost instinctive desire to spend money as soon as you get it, especially on things that provide immediate pleasure.
It's like there's this equation in our minds. Money equals enjoyment. And so often, we end up spending money we don't have to buy things we don't need to impress people we don't even like.
And the material suggests creating a financial freedom account and making it a habit to contribute to it regularly. It also talks about the power of compound interest and the importance of paying yourself first, setting aside a portion of your income for savings and investment before you pay any other bills.
And it suggests aiming for a savings rate of 15–20%. But even if you can only start with 1%, that's better than nothing. The key is to start and to be consistent. And it also talks about living on a smaller percentage of your income as your earnings grow. So if you get a raise, don't just increase your spending proportionally. Save a good chunk of it.
Einstein famously said that compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. And it's true. Even small amounts saved consistently over time can grow into a substantial nest egg.
Okay, let's move on to time management. We all have the same 24 hours in a day, but some people just seem to get so much more done.
The material talks about this concept of creative abandonment. It's the discipline to stop doing things that aren't really important, to free up time for the things that are.
And it emphasizes the importance of considering the consequences of your activities. Which ones have a significant impact? Which ones don't really matter in the long run?
And it talks about the power of starting on your most important task first, even when you don't feel like it. Once you overcome that initial inertia, you often find that you get into a flow and actually enjoy the work.
It's the law of forced efficiency. You always find the time for the things that are truly important. And it suggests asking yourself some key questions to help you focus on those priorities. Why are you on the payroll? What are your key result areas? What's the most valuable use of your time right now?
And it encourages you to apply these time management principles not just to your work, but to all areas of your life, to overcome procrastination and make the most of your time.
And it mentions some specific techniques like the ABCDE method, identifying your A1 task, your top priority, and constantly asking yourself what the most valuable use of your time is at any given moment.
It's about being intentional with your time and making sure you're focusing on the things that matter most.
Let's shift gears one last time to problem solving. The material talks about how our natural tendency when we encounter problems is to get upset and blame someone else.
Right, but that doesn't really help solve the problem, does it? So the key is to discipline yourself to stay calm, objective, and unemotional when problems arise.
And to focus on solutions instead of dwelling on the problem itself. The material even suggests saying, I am responsible as soon as you encounter a problem, even if you weren't directly involved in creating it.
Because it shifts your mindset from victim to problem solver. And it reminds us that the reward for solving problems is that you get to solve bigger and more complex problems.
Your ability to solve problems effectively is a key determinant of your success in life, whether it's in your career, your relationships, or your personal life.
And the more you focus on finding solutions, the better you become at it. It builds your confidence and your sense of self-efficacy.
And the material even says that success, happiness, and leadership can all be defined in part by your ability to solve problems.
So it's a skill worth developing. And the action step here is simple but powerful. Identify your biggest current problems.
Because you can't solve a problem if you don't know what it is.
Exactly. Awareness is the first step.
Wow, we've really covered a lot of ground today. This has been a true deep dive into the power of self-discipline. It's not about restriction, it's about liberation. It's about unlocking your potential in every area of your life.
And what's so great about the material you sent in is that it's packed with actionable advice.
Huh?
It's not just theory. It's about giving you the tools to actually implement these principles in your own life.
So for you, the listener, think about what resonated with you the most today. What's one small change you can commit to making right now?
This has been a great foundational conversation, but there's always more to explore.